Other industries would not let their people sit there and twiddle their thumbs 35% of the time.
35% of the time standing around.
I'm Shelley Copsey, CEO and co-founder of a company called FYLD. We work in the infrastructure sector. We see these mega projects running late. We help remote command centres understand where operational risk is emerging in real time. One of the struggles this industry has always had is, if I want a safer work site, I've got to trade off productivity and time.
Where have you got to on the journey? Turnover, people?
There's about 55 of us. We're doing 80% year-on-year growth this year, coming up doing our Series B capital raise.
How have you freed up time so that you can focus on that?
My inbox has got about 104,000 unread messages. It is concerning to look at the job market today. People with computer science degrees are virtually unemployable in their early years. I don't think that we're going to get to the future we're all looking for without having a period of adjustment that is going to hurt. That would be naive. I'm Shelley Copsey, CEO and co-founder of a company called FYLD. We work in the infrastructure sector. It's a sector that is ripe with problems. We all see people sitting on the side of the road, not getting their work done. We see these mega projects running late. And my company actually works with massive providers into the sector, helping them understand what's going on in the field. We get visibility. We run AI over all of this data we've got coming in, and we help them understand how operational risk is emerging. We've been doing this for about 5 years. I've had a career consulting into the infrastructure sector. I'm passionate about the built world and how we can make it more productive, efficient, but really importantly, make sure that every field worker, when they leave the house in the morning, knows that they're going to come home safe and sound every night. It's still an incredibly dangerous industry to work in.
Shelley, that's brilliant. Great to have you here. Before we dive into why you're passionate about the built world and how you ended up running an IT business impacting infrastructure, what are some things that you believe that you think sets you at odds with the rest of the world?
I would just start right at the moment with all the doom and gloom around AI and that, we're building for a world where nobody's going to have jobs and they're just going to be for the elite few. Personally just believe we'll have mass civil unrest before that ever takes place. But I also think the onus is on all of us today to kind of park what some of these people are saying and begin to build and create the world that we want for the future, for ourselves, for our children, grandchildren, and everybody. But I think we just got to flip that on its head. Next one, working in the infrastructure sector, right? You see all of the people running the massive platform companies in the construction sector, et cetera, telling you we've got a skills shortage. I don't believe it. At FYLD, we track 35% standing time on site, right? It's huge. Other industries would not let their people sit there and twiddle their thumbs 35% of the time. We've got a problem of understanding why field workers are not productive and helping them get their job done, right? Going on from that though, I think there's a huge fallacy about innovation is key. To me, AI, and as it emerges and with all this fear mongering around it, there's a pushback, right? How do you actually just focus on adoption, user experience, all those things that we know from a SaaS world are amazing, and just bring them into this world of AI? And I guess building on from that last point, I think that we need to stop focusing on the technology. Right? Why are phones so ubiquitous? Because we forget that they even existed, right? They've faded into the background, even though they're a physical instrument. As we begin to build new systems, I really think that we need to stop thinking about the tech being visible and actually making it invisible to make people's lives easier.
Oh, fab. Right. 35% of the time standing around. If I'm getting paid per day and I'm a construction worker, it's no real great onus on me to do anything about that. I mean, I'm not going to earn any more money if I do any work, am I? I mean, I just remember back to when I worked at M&S, and I remember we hired in a load of temporary students over the Christmas busy period. And I remember the foreman saying to them, now listen, I don't want anyone working too hard. We work here all the fucking time. So if anybody shows us up and works really hard, you're fired. And it's just that sort of has stuck with me as the antithesis of any business I'm in or want to build. But if I'm a construction worker, is it worth my while? Should I be busy all 8 hours? Or isn't it great that they're managing to take a rest and a fag break and a cup of tea and not work too hard?
Again, I think this is one of the fallacies of this industry, that people believe that the workers are kind of happy sitting there frustrated. It's an industry that's often had a lot of blame in it, faulting the field workers for not actually getting the bridge built on time, etc. I love going out into the field and meeting construction workers, right? People in the utility sector. They're the people that keep the gas coming to our houses so that we're warm in, these freezing winters that I've experienced since I moved to the UK. They keep the water coming to our houses for the baths. These are people, they don't get paid massive amounts of money a lot of the time. They're working in difficult conditions, like middle of the night, rain, hail, storm. It doesn't matter. They're out there keeping, the country running. My experience is no different to any other industry. I've been a consultant my whole life before, the last 10 years or so. Even in consulting, top tier firms, there's like 20% of people that do kind of want to get away with doing nothing. But the mass of people in any industry I've ever worked in, they want to be productive, they want to contribute, they want to enjoy their working day. I think that we just need to flip this on its head a little and say, like, how come we're sending these people out to the field without the right tools, without the right accreditations? Like, how can we actually have like neat operational systems for the field that let them stay productive the whole time? One thing that we find really interesting when we deployed our platform, right? If you can imagine, let's just take a big water utility. They send 3,000 people out in the morning. People are
Yeah.
proudly doing their job, but like, unlike being in an office, it's invisible work. People 2, 3, 4 layers up, they never see what you do. When we deploy field, they like proudly take videos more than we ever ask them to, because they actually tend to want to show people they're doing a great job. And I really think that most people in this industry want to contribute well, but there's like severe frustration in the field about how they're not equipped to do well quite often.
I think you're right. Like philosophically, I think everyone gets out of bed in the morning, or most people get out of bed
Most
in the
people.
morning and want to do a decent job and want to
Yeah.
finish at 5 o'clock and feel like they accomplished something and it was meaningful. So
If you
how
know
come?
someone at M&S that still needs a bit of a hand, you can refer them to me.
And so why if it wasn't the weather, why did you move to the UK?
It was for a job, not the current one, but the previous one. I was on the board of it when I was in Australia, and when you just fall a little bit in love with something that's a
Yeah.
side project to your main job, and yeah, that was me. I kind of like just raced forward, jumped in, and never looked back, and now I'm stuck in the grey.
You can go back, you can go back. You can
I
go
go
and
back.
seek the sunshine. 10 years you said you've been going. Why did you start this business? What was the itch that you had to scratch?
So we're about 5 years old. It
All right.
didn't start like a normal startup, actually. It's quite interesting. We started as a project, started by one of the world's biggest infrastructure investors, and they,
Right.
across their whole portfolio, were seeing the risk emerge to the struggles they were having in the field as complexity out there got bigger. They just did like a little project. They built a tiny bit of technology, and I got a phone call and they asked me, look, could you look at the technology? We've got a few million we could give you. There's 6 people that worked on the project. Do you think that you could build something around this? Now, like, I worked more at the M&A end of this industry in my younger years. And again, so at the head office, everybody talking about liabilities and contract, this, that, and the other, but they could never really solve it. And all of a sudden, when you just begin to see technological trends and changes, and we were
Uh-huh.
looking, in the workplace, video was becoming a form of communication. The 5G standard had just come in. Better phones were being given to the field workers. And when I saw
Hmm.
this bit of technology and I kind of looked at the trends that would, be coming through over the next 5, 8 years, I just could see that this problem that was just endemic through my career that I'd seen, we might finally have an opportunity to solve it. If I would say it now, 5 years on, we're building like globally the reference platform for like frontline intelligence for the infrastructure sector. So, once you kind of like get on that mission, it's very hard to stop.
That's fab. Where have you got to on the journey? Like turnover, people, countries? What's the?
Trying to keep the company numbers tight, which,
Uh-huh.
that's the nice side of AI, isn't it? Everybody's getting like pretty productive for us, but there's about 55 of us, might be,
Yep.
60, 65 by Christmas, because we're scaling nicely. We're doing 80% year on year growth this year, coming up in the next, 6 months or so to doing our Series B capital raise. So the company's growing really, really nicely. But I think like really excitingly, we've hit a tipping point where you go from like almost like the early adopters, more experimentation to, when you begin to hit that mass market and you're like, I've got something. We've acquired some customers in the US recently that have got 30,000 field workers. We're working with like brand names that startups would just die to work with in their industry. So yeah, it's a really exciting time in the journey.
Oh, fantastic, fantastic. Look, let me pull you back to you don't think AI is doom and gloom and you don't think we'll all end up getting paid 3 grand a month to do nothing. Do you think that's likely to happen? Why don't you? Or are you just ignoring the news and saying, sod it, it doesn't matter?
Yeah, I guess a few things. I think that the next 10, 15 years will be hard. I've got 2 kids, 14, 16, and it is concerning to look at the job market today and people with computer science degrees are virtually unemployable in their early years and so forth. I don't think that we're going to get to the future we're all looking for without having a period of adjustment that is going to hurt. That would be naive. I don't know. I just have a fundamental belief that like people are good, that society wants to work nicely, that we look for harmonious solutions, that humans are looking for ways that let them connect and have meaning in life. I think that maybe people have like walked into some of what's going on today a little bit blindfolded. We all love things like Uber, etc. But as we begin to see like a Waymo come in, and we give licenses to foreign companies to operate in a market that has mass employment, right? I think there's a little bit of being blindfolded about how quickly we do that and how we should enable transition and skills training and so forth. But I think, like any revolution, right, you'll begin to see people, like if I just take that simple example, that lesson will get learned pretty quick when we see mass unemployment in the taxi industry. And we'll start saying after we see two or three of these, like we actually need to begin to forward invest. I just have a very positive view that we will not let it get too bad before we begin to get better. But also, if it does get horrendously bad, I do think the civil unrest will fix it for us, although that could be another 20, 30 years of extreme pain.
Yeah, you see, it's interesting because I think even if you take taxis, it'll be, I suspect there won't be, like, it's not like one day there's 30,000 taxi drivers are out on their ear because it's city by city,
Mm,
and like I live in the country, there are no Ubers where I live, right?
no.
People come down to the farm and they say, okay, how do I get a taxi? I went, oh, you didn't book that yesterday? Oh, well, you are shit out of luck. But and so like that sort of pace of change is different in something like London or San Francisco
Mm.
versus across the rest of the country. So if we are able to create other jobs as a result of this, then maybe there's some harmonious transition. But one of the other things you said is, look, great tech just disappears into the background.
Mm.
Specifically with yours, are people consuming your tech on a tablet, is on a phone? How does your tech just that 3,000 construction workers or what have you, how do they consume your tool?
Yeah, so they consume an app deployed, iOS, Android, whatever they have, bring your own device or company device. We really don't mind, but app deployed. We get workers just to walk around site taking videos and telling us about site conditions and what they're going to do. From that, we help remote command centers understand where operational risk is emerging in real time. We use AI to do that. We've got a very large proprietary data set. But to me, for the person in the field, it doesn't really matter precisely how we do it. I'm not talking black box here because actually anybody can dig into our algorithms and they're very understandable. But from their perspective, that they don't really need to know in the moment. We're doing A, B, C, D, what have you. To me, it's the simplicity of, oh, actually, we've seen something that you didn't see. You might want to look at X, right? And I often think that we go to cognitive overload often with AI and with technology. One thing that we've learned with our field workers, over many years of operation, if we want to keep them safe in the field, if we were to give them like 20, 30 hazards on site, and believe me, there is at least that many with most customers we work with on any site, the human can't actually ingest that many pieces of risk. Here's how I mitigate, blah, blah. Like, when you get to a point of actually I'm becoming less safe because I'm consuming it. Like, we actually think more simply about, like, let's say a high energy hazard. High energy hazards, humans are not very good at observing, and it's often where people get seriously hurt, right? So again, if you think about tech fading into the background, how can we analyze everything and help our customers like systematically see what's going on? But for the worker, how do we just simply show them that pipe over there that's been, suspended, is it suspended well? Because if it rolls towards you, that's going to kill you. So there's a little bit of like, what do people need to, simple fact, that's why this industry is
Yes.
so dangerous. Yeah, but like,
Yes.
what do they need to know? What do they don't? But they don't need to necessarily see all the algorithms and how clever we are that we can do this. It's about making it simple for them and just part of their everyday life.
Is the ROI risk mitigation, or is the ROI, you're using one of the other things you said is, look, people are spending 35% of the time standing around. Is it people are spending less time standing around, or is it we take the risk out of the sites?
It's a combination. I actually think one of the struggles this industry has always had is, oh, if I want a safer work site, I've got to trade off productivity and time. And actually, I think one of the really neat things of technology is that we can, almost like that old saying of like all boats rising in the harbour together. If we can get a safe site, we can get a productive site, right? I think that you can actually improve the two together. But we drive ROI for our customers from a number of angles. Firstly, if we can understand why people are standing, we can stop it very quickly, right? Normally half the problem here, if you're going to a command center, people's phones are ringing all day long, they're WhatsApping, etc. It's not modern technology. Firstly, just make it visible, and we help them just drive down that standing time because they know where it's occurring and they just stop it. We help these companies that we work with then begin to say, well, systematically, like, where is it still occurring? What processes, procedures can we change so that we chip away at it? So there's a large piece. If I'm a regulated utility and we're all ratepayers, how do I get more capacity from my existing field crew because the regulators ain't letting me put more people on? If I'm supply chain, I'm a for-profit. For them, it's about how do I get more work done with these field work, drive higher profits. Again, though, when I look to what does this mean, this is an industry where people would like to get a bit of extra compensation, this, that, and the other. If we can help make people more productive, the economics of the industry change, and that's good for everybody.
Fab. And then the other thing that you mentioned was the adoption versus innovation, and the innovation's worthless if you can't do the adoption.
Yeah.
And do you feel, are you in an industry which has challenges historically with adoption and change, or?
Huge. So if you actually look at this industry and why transformation hasn't been successful, there's always the stat like construction workers had like a 40% productivity decline since the 1970s. It's very real and it's quite a shocking number. But I actually looked at technologists. We always build for the back office, right? I think SAP, Oracle, Salesforce, all of these platforms are built for the back office, and then we push them on some like post-event built app when we're like, we better give something to the field. And it's all about helping the back office do their job better, right? We've kind of flipped it on its head. And right from the beginning, we did a lot of ethnographic research with field workers. We were really lucky to build field with one of the UK's biggest gas networks, SGN. 750 field workers helped us build it. And our starting point was not like, how do we make the CFO's life better? It was, how do we make your job easier every single day? And, the app, if you ever saw it, it feels a bit like a mix of a banking app and social media, timeline based, little ticks so I can see people have read it. But we really started with like, what would it take for you to use it? Our CSAT runs at 8 out of 10, which anybody that knows field workers, it's an unheard of stat. Most of them need to give us 3 pieces of data a day. They give us 7 to 10. So that usability piece is the first step towards driving adoption has been huge for us. And it's something that we've never lost focus on, that field worker, they may not pay the bill, but they are our customer.
Well, and if they moan, like they could be noisy enough that the whole thing gets cancelled, or if people don't use it, the whole thing gets cancelled. So when you do a pilot, it just doesn't work.
Yeah, so for us, that's that bit that we had to get adoption right. And then we can do lots of smart technical stuff, but that adoption is key.
The 40% decline in productivity, I was watching a video. So the UK, we had a children's TV program called Blue Peter, and one of its presenters, as I grew up, was a guy called Johnny Noakes, and he was up Nelson's column. And so the video clip that I saw was up Nelson's column, I think in the 70s. And there he was climbing some wooden ladders without no harness. I mean, he literally had a rope tied around his waist. He's on top of Nelson's column with no safety equipment, right? And so completely normal in the 70s. Has the productivity gone down because we've introduced all the safety? Is that? And so that's when you're saying people go, oh, I don't think I can have productivity and safety at the same time, because in fact they've learned over time that this has historically been true.
I would look at it in 2 ways. If you just think about investing the right time in safety, just as the pure time it takes to make a site safe today versus 30 years ago, and also couple that with the complexity of sites today versus 30, 40 years ago, then yes, you probably will see a productivity hit in that there's 20, 30 minutes time at the beginning of the job to secure site. When you begin to look at the data, though, about the impact incidents and injuries have on site productivity, putting aside, there is just a moral purpose that we need to keep people safe. But if I just go to pure productivity, the offset of not having incidents and injuries is so much bigger than the 20, 30 minutes that you lose at the start of the day. One of the UK regulators, Ofgem, they actually have funded us a stack of money to do a project looking at how do we predict where site risk may occur as the day progresses. They're not the health and safety regulator. They were purely looking at it. How many, millions of pounds in, capacity effectively could we bring into the system if we could get rid of more and more incidents? So blunt force, yes, that does drive down 20, 30 minutes lost, but the actual upside overall of capacity in the system far outweighs it.
Okay, fab. Let me interrupt the conversation just for a minute because I don't want you to miss this. My new book, Mind Your Fucking Business, is out on Amazon. If you're thinking yet another business book, I think you're wrong. This is actually a blueprint to cutting through the noise and achieving unparalleled success for you. It's based on
10 years of business coaching, spotting similar problems that people have had and coming up with real-world solutions. If it's supercharging sales, if it's mastering talent acquisition, building a powerhouse brand, cultivating a company culture that breeds success, then this book is a ticket to your transformative journey. It's filled with practical tools and frameworks that I use every single day with my clients as part of their coaching program. If you want to take your business from good to great, look, you can go to Amazon and you can buy it, or you can click the link in the show notes and head over to monkhouseandcompany.com and I'll give you a copy. I'll send it to you today. I'll send you a copy for free. I want to help you build a fantastic business. Now, back to the conversation.
So look, let me just jump in to pick your brains around your scaling journey. Was there a point where you, or maybe you're already there, thinking about the things that only you can do, raising capital, products, markets. How have you freed up time so that you can focus on that? What did you have to change back when you maybe on that journey from sort of 10 to 15 up to 30 or 50 even, where, what did you do?
I think firstly, I just let go of guilt about what other people wanted me to do. My inbox has got about 104,000 unread messages. Email is not the way to catch me. But you often just, I don't know, I had a corporate job for many years. You feel beholden to responding to people and being polite, this, that, and the other. Right? I just am brutal about what's actually going to make FYLD go forward or not. So that's the first one. Lots of stuff just doesn't get done. I don't ever see it cause too many fires. That would be the first thing. I think the delegation and trust, and this one's actually really hard. It's not because I don't trust people, but as you begin to grow and every customer's precious and they've all been hard fought and hard won. This is the industry I work in. It's high risk. It's behemoths. They don't work with a company like ours easy. So then actually trusting others to own that relationship is really hard. I think I've had to learn, firstly, just be brutal. If I don't trust someone, trust my gut and get somebody else in because I can't risk the business on someone I don't trust. But secondly, how to manage with data. And more so than just manage with data, I really focus on lead indicators. So we've got enough data now to know when there's a problem emerging with a customer, how can I see it ahead of time, not behind time? So I try and do things like that so that I do get the headspace. I still love going out and seeing our customers and talking to them. I think as a CEO, or a founder, you've got a unique privilege. You can have discussions that others can't. They don't feel like it's a sales pitch. So I still make time for that. And then as you say, capital raising, you've got to be talking to investors and, that's my job and it's not one that you actually can delegate. But yeah, I'm ruthless with what I don't do and I don't care.
The delegation piece. So thinking back to your leadership team when it sort of first appeared, where it is, you've been in sales longer, so you can be head of sales and, you can run dev because, you've been here for more than 6 months. What version of your leadership team do you reckon you're on now? And other than you, are any of them still the same people?
Yeah, no, we'd be 3 or 4. One of our founders left us about 12, 18 months ago. Really, really difficult time being candid, but we're tight and close and he's great and a great supporter. We've been through a few sales leaders. I think hiring in great sales leadership in an early stage company is incredibly difficult.
Why? Tell me why you think that's particularly hard.
I think that you get lots of people that want to be a sales leader, but they haven't been before, and then they're doing it in a very ambiguous environment. If I'm an amazing sales leader, I probably want to join a company where I've already got 5, 8 established reps working for me, where the path to earning my high salary packer is a little bit more certain. And you're asking people to take a risk. And if you got 2-3 million pounds of revenue and you've got 10 customers and you've got maybe 1 rep, I think it's just not the most attractive spot for a lot of people to come into.
What did you do to make that more attractive to the person who's in it and winning now?
We have an amazing CRO now. I'm delighted to have him on the team, but actually it came by looking more closely at my board and a skills matrix on my board. And once we got some different talent onto the board, the ability to use their network to find someone who, if I advertised the role, probably wouldn't respond. But, they use the network to say, actually, this company may be young, but it is a bit different and it is worth looking at. I think that the network is amazing. Most of my best hires do come through network.
Okay. And the board, is it, you've raised money, so you probably have a fiduciary board.
Yes.
But you're picking your board and rather than your investors, or do your investors have representation on your board as well?
My investors have got representation, then I've got 2 non-executive directors.
And why did you pick the ones you've got? Because obviously you must have swapped them out because you said I changed the board.
No, so we actually haven't swapped out. It was an enhancement of the board is how I would put the change. Yeah, so I'm really lucky. Our chairperson has been with us from day one. He and I immediately hit it off. He knows the industry we're in, even if he's not like in SaaS like we are, but he's been in infrastructure forever. Also, what was really important to me, like a chair brings stability. Again, like what am I looking for in the role? And that to me was like very important. I've got 3 institutional investors behind us. Like I said, one of the world's biggest pension plans. I needed somebody that could navigate a complex environment and help bring stability for the first 3-4 years while we got off the ground. And I've been incredibly lucky. We've got a great working relationship. More recently, though, again, if I look at my board and institutional investors behind me, I needed more go-to-market experience. And what I would say of my board is they were incredibly supportive when I said, like, we're missing a trick, not having this skill set at the board. Can I find somebody? They just all let me get on with it and they embraced the recommendation warmly. I'm very lucky with my board.
Fab. And so of the leadership team that started, you said one of the founders had left. How many on your leadership team now?
We would have 5.
And how many of them have been on the leadership team from the beginning other than you?
Well, kind of me, and then I've got a co-founder, Carl Simons. He joined after 12 months, but we gave him the title. You know, the day he arrived, we're like, actually, we've got a company today. There was something about that moment. So we kind of brought him into the founding team. But so he and I, but then, you know, everybody else. And a bit like what you've said, over-promote is the wrong word, but I've promoted someone, but then we've got bigger, these enterprise customers, and you actually just need someone with more experience. And so we have gone through those journeys, not easy.
You know, I was talking to a founder recently and he said, Dom, do you know what? I don't think, he was thinking about the first few people he'd ever hired. He said, I don't think A, they'd ever get in, and B, I wouldn't hire them. But at the time, they were the best people I could hire.
Yeah.
And then it's like you need a group of Swiss Army knives at the beginning because there's so many plates spinning, and then it starts to specialize. It's hard, isn't it, though? Because it's like they've been with us from the beginning. It's like...
We've been lucky though. Like we've had some amazing people who have led functions, and you know, about 12 months ago we brought in an amazing CPTO. He's really experienced, and we just needed someone that had C-suite experience, that had worked with venture-backed companies. My engineering director and product director, they're amazing. It's not a credit to them, just it was that I need someone who's gone from A to B to C before. What we've been really successful with, though, is that team understanding that they're lucky that they've got this person with so much more experience to work for, and just made sure that they've got amazing like learning plans in place so that they can optimize their experience. And then I think there's an openness, like, you know, as I discussed with both of them, if they want to have his role in their next venture, this will actually give them a leg up to get that role because, you know, our chances of success are higher and they're going to learn.
I think, I mean, that's a tour of duty. Jerry Toombs was with me this morning, one of our former clients who exited. And, you know, he introduced me to that concept. And then I had Chris Yeo, one of the co-authors of that book, on the show. And I think it's that honest conversation about, like, why are you here? Like, what, like, you're not here forever. We're not all here forever. And what's the next step? And why would the next 3 years of your life be worth staying with us rather than getting the hump, taking your ego and getting a job before you're ready for it and failing? You know, it's like, let's be honest about what we're trying to do.
I mean, they're hard, those conversations, aren't they? But I have learned, like, I guess the hard way. If you don't have them, great people leave. And if you do have them, 80% of the time you can get that person to stick around.
Yeah. And much better to keep that in the business than lose it, because it's like that institutional knowledge is vital early on. And what systems have you put in place to ease your scaling over the last sort of 18 months, 2 years? What is true about your business now that wasn't true maybe 2 years ago?
Things like, you know, use of a CRM. It's very easy. I often say, like, when you're building a business, it's hard work, right? And you want to have like rose tinted glasses because otherwise you'd collapse and die lots of days of the week. I would. A CRM though.
Do you know, I think it's that just looking at a pile of shit and being optimistic, isn't it? It's like, if you haven't got that, don't be a founder. Because it's your superpower. It's the difference between a founder and a professional CEO, where they go like, it's broken and I can fix it, but you know, or they're a turnaround specialist. Whereas, you know, you're always thinking, I can see how good this can be.
Yeah. You have to, don't you? But the CRM also means that on a day where I'm like in a great mood, I can stop and say, actually, like systematically, where are we winning? Where are we losing? And how does that inform strategy? So religious use of a CRM has been a huge thing that we've focused on.
And how many sellers are you now?
We've got about 5 people selling in the business.
I did a roundtable with one of the PE guys in London and their CROs or sales directors. And there's about 20 odd companies or 20 people in the room representing their portfolio. And it was really interesting that 5-person was the cutoff. Most of the room had 5 or fewer sellers. And they were running the Michael Jordan model, which was we just hire great salespeople and frankly, we let them do whatever they like as long as they're winning. And then there was everyone who had sort of 10 or more. And they said, you have to have CRM discipline. You have to have a process because otherwise it doesn't scale. And, if you don't toe the line, I fire them because the system is more important than the individuals.
Yeah, we've come through that in the last 6 months, right? So deployment of MedPick, how we use our solution consultants to validate. We're enterprise selling. These are big numbers. We invest in deployment. Going and winning the wrong customer, investing in deployment and having them churn in 12 months is an expensive exercise now that we know our ICP. If I'd maybe go to another fallacy I see, I think building an AI company is really different to building a SaaS company. You need to experiment, deploy, understand the ability of a customer you're working with to ingest AI. It is quite different to ingesting SaaS and just an updated workflow, right? But we've now learned who our ICP is and who our buying persona is. And, if I go back to what do we systematize and discipline, it's like if it doesn't meet those basic qualification hurdles, it is out. And, if we find people that want to progress things through pipeline where we don't have business cases, etc., and we're still kind of like POV selling, it's just not of interest to us anymore. But these are hard decisions, right? Because you've got to keep building every quarter. People are saying, are you doing 80% annualized growth this quarter? And it's like, yes. And I'm doing it with like chucking those opportunities out because we know they're wrong, even if we could win them, but they wouldn't be. This stuff I find is hard, but you just have to have belief in yourself that you can almost do more with less and that it's going to give you better economics, but not easy decisions to make.
2 other things I want to pick your brains on. We touched a little bit about go-to-market, but let's segue from that because we're talking about sort of CRM and stuff. What's helped you unlock? Because typically businesses go SME, and then when they've got SaaS businesses typically go SME, and then when they've got a platform, they step up into enterprise. And you've gone, because I guess your original founders and investors were an enterprise. You've been enterprise from day one. But what's working for you in terms of go-to-market?
We've got like the basics. I think you'd find any enterprise company, events, and having a really strong presence at events, and having like senior people, not just leaving it to the younger people to be out there. That's been really important for us. Word of mouth and reputation. I think that when you work in enterprise, the biggest fear that enterprise have is that if I go work with that startup, are they going to introduce risk into my business? I've got a nice stable business. So the word of mouth, it's true, isn't it?
And if I do nothing, we had the jolt effect. The biggest risk is doing nothing because nobody's going to get fired for doing nothing, because best practice is do nothing. And I now need to persuade you to take a risk on us.
Exactly. So word of mouth is important. Like one thing I always remember, this is only what happens in startups, right? We fought long and hard during COVID when we started to win our first customer. And the day that we were due to send them our first ever bill going out the door, they declared bankruptcy, right? This doesn't happen to normal businesses, right? And we're all sitting there in despair. They were then bought by one of the behemoths in our industry. We've never actually managed to crack the nut of that behemoth, but there are 20 people in that organization who still use FYLD. And, the one thing that we decided that day was, even if these people can never pay us again, they took a leap of faith. And to me, you be good to people. They've referenced us many, many times. So your word of mouth in our go-to-market is strong. But then actually just going back to what you said before about leadership and the questions we're talking about, it's a willingness to, again, say like, what period of business growth am I in, and what does this mean for my marketing? And for us right at the moment, founder word of mouth events has been amazing, but we've now got to build like an amazing lead gen engine. This is again why you need systems, because you begin to say, where are my leads coming from? How sustainable is that? What changes do I need to make?
Do you know what? That you just triggered so often I see people thinking, I'm going back to use your example in sales, right? They're thinking, I need to hire a head of sales. So it's like, what skills do I need? But they often miss what stage am I at, right? Because I need somebody who's done this journey before and is happy to come and create something out of chaos. Yes. So often they hire somebody who, as you said, they hire somebody who wants to do the job but hasn't done it before.
Yeah.
And then they're making it up and you haven't got time. And then maybe they're making it up and they're not successful because they don't know what to do. But what other hiring tips have you got? So like you've got, what do you say, 50?
Yeah, 50, 55 people. Actually, I heard a great one the other day. I was talking to another founder in my sector, and I'm trying this at the moment. He said at the beginning of the interview, I tell people my answer is likely to be no, even if you're great. You're really going to need to prove to me like why you are the best person in the world for the job. And as you get a bit bigger, as your brand gets better known, you're one of like the cool startups. We were lucky enough to get like #3 hottest AI startup in the UK this year from Startups UK, right? All of a sudden you get a bit more choice. And I'm trying to lean into a little bit more. This is again, knowing where you are on the journey and making deliberate shifts in how you behave. Early days, you maybe spend more of the interview convincing them on the why of you, right?
Yes.
I am very deliberately stopping that now and poking and prodding more and trying to have that, is this the person that is going to now move the needle? Because we're beyond experimentation. We need people that can come in and execute, and we don't need misfires anymore.
I like that. It makes it easier when you say you can get to the end of the interview and go, I told you at the beginning you weren't like it was likely to be a
Yeah.
no. It's a no, right?
No.
And then
You're
you don't.
great,
That's that's an email you don't need to write later on.
There we go. That's how I scale more time back.
Efficiency, brilliant. What else? What else along the way? Because if you've got 50, maybe you've hired. I don't know. You might have hired 150 in 5 years, and you got 50 left. Like
Probably have done something like that.
what have you got? What's a thing you've done that's made it so that you feel much better about hiring A players today than you did a few years ago?
I have got a couple of starting things, right? The first thing I always think is there's 8 billion people in the world, and lots of them are very, very smart, and we only need 55, 60 of them. And so if you only need 55, 60 of these, 8 billion people and the ones that are like at the super intelligent end of the spectrum, you've got like quite a lot of choice. You can hold out and get people that are going to be nice and a really good culture fit. I think from there, even if they don't end up being the best person from the job, at least you're not having like culture cancer arrive in the organization, and that's really important. You know what I mean? Like you just don't want even one day of someone that's a bad cultural fit. If we get to talking about books, for me, it's all about tempo as well, right? And so from the culture point of view, the one thing I can't stand is when someone comes in and they slow us down. That's, dreadful for a company like us. So that cultural fit, even if they're not the best person in the world at the job when they arrive, you can deal with that. They might need to be exited, coach, what have you. But to me, it's always, I don't want one day of somebody with bad culture in the company.
Have you had instances where you've had toxic people in the business?
Yeah, we have, and it's a very quick exit for them. If you ask my team, like, what am I good at? They would say it's the fast exit when we get like a bad egg in the business.
Go on then. Let's switch to books. What have you read along the way that you think, I don't know, maybe you wished you'd read it earlier, or definitely people should pick it up and read it?
Okay, my favorite book, if I just go like personal, but it's got good business connotations, Any Human Heart by William Boyd. The arc of his entire life from childhood to death, set during war, etc. Why do I love it though? To me, it really is like about resilience, positive attitude. There'll be ups and downs through the journey, but that most situations are temporal. And how do you navigate out of a temporal situation that's less than ideal to a better place? And, I just kind of love that way of thinking, but it's, told through a story and through a wonderful character. That's always one of my favorites to think about, particularly if I'm in a rougher moment. Right at the moment, I have just started reading Amp It Up by Frank Slootman, ex-ServiceNow Snowflake. Just going back to the piece I said about tempo, earlier this year we were probably more like 65, 70 people. We're at about 50, 55 now. We made some, hard decisions like you need to on where was the cash being burnt, was it being burnt in the right spots, etc. And also how can we get a bit more productive. But what I'm really looking forward to of reading that book is that we will now begin to rebuild a bit over the next 6, 12 months, hopefully not too much, but a bit. How do I keep the tempo up in the business as we build? I'm looking forward to learning from somebody who's been an absolute master at this about how you don't let mediocrity creep in, how you keep the tempo up as you get customers and, proper enterprise selling, demanding more and more of your product. How do you keep it simple so that you can keep up that pace? So I've just started and looking forward to getting that one nailed.
That's fab. That's a definite purchase after this. Yeah.
And then Christmas, that's the next book, right? And I don't have time to read every day of the week. I wish I did. I always think at Christmas, I look for a book that's a little bit more reflective, right? So I think I'm going to read 4,000 Weeks, Time Management for Mortals. I haven't read it yet, but I really like, it's been kind of ringing true with me that this year at FYLD, it's been a year actually very focused on productivity by the team. But actually next year is where we're scaling more and more the intentional piece in that book about, how are you actually using your time versus just the pure. I think we've cracked a lot of productivity, but that intention piece, I think that will get my read.
Look, it fits in with your whole narrative about what problem are you solving for your customers. And if you can't solve that problem internally, then it's unlikely you'll be able to solve it for them. And that curiosity in the team and the psychological safety that people need to be able to say, Shelley, I don't think we're doing this the wrong way, or I think we're doing this wrong, or we've made a mistake, and how do we fix it? All of that sort of organizational entropy, which you're about to hit, or you did hit, and you've chopped some people out to get the metabolic rate back up. Getting through the sort of phase shift at about 100 employees going still where everybody's an A player is absolutely key.
Yes, I think that one, because I think as well, there's like heaps of people that have been with me on this journey for 5 years or 4 years or so. Like they know me well enough to do the piece that you just said, but like creating a culture where new people feel equally comfortable, that's to me going to be the key to unlocking the tempo stays up and we've got A players in the room.
Well, particularly because a year from now, half the people will be under a year. And then 2 years from now, 2/3 of them will be with you for less than 2 years. And so you're at that point where, 100 kicks in because it's Dunbar's number, and, and the culture that you have now sets the culture for, all the way through to 250. It's really hard to change when it gets bigger than 100.
Yeah. No, my last company were about 120 when I left. And I just know that difference that you have when you've got a really small, agile team. But like you've said, I just want to make sure that, as of today, every person that's been inducted, there's like the things that these are our field ways of working and we're actually not moving on them. If they're not right for you, that's cool. But then this isn't the place for you. I think we're getting more rigid on that.
Yeah. How have you that? Because that often people only realize they need to do that when the founder meets somebody over the coffee machine and they go, who the fuck hired you? But, it sounds like you've done that early. What have you put in place so that the new people are getting sheep dipped?
I think it's just like the way that we're inducting them into the business now, the amount of time that I'm making sure I spend with new people. I'm probably just looking at things a little bit more critically now than I did. Like, I always think, when you're at year 2, year 3, there is still chaos everywhere in a startup. I mean, I'm sure there's the rare one that there's not. It's funny, like you spend a lot of time hiring, but then maybe you don't spend enough time with them in the first 3 months. Right. Whereas like now for me, it's one of the very few things where I still feel like I've got a good lever. If I get time, if I question them in the right way, if I know when to use a public Slack or a private one to say, great, but like maybe we could have done X, Y, Z. I think just being very intentional in how I engage with the team is really the only, but I always think I can do a lot of my job in the evening, right? Like, the founder job, but during the day, like the gift I have is to keep the company moving at pace, to call out if I see values that are not aligned to our values and so forth. And, people often say to me, I'm probably one of the most prolific slackers in the company, but it is because I've got the grace during the day to, pay attention to the goings on of the business. They've got day jobs to do, but my day job can be done from 7 p.m. Don't love it, but it's just the sheer fact of what I do for a living.
It's not a sort of part-time job, is it?
No, it's not, but I love it. But like when kids say to you, mine every now and then, they're just like, oh, like you work a lot. And I'm like, yeah, because I love it. You should like make sure that you go find something that you love as well, because then it's not hard.
Yeah, then you don't need a hobby because this.
No, you don't need a hobby. It's what I do.
Yeah, fab. Shelley, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you today. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Next time on Curious Leadership.
It takes about 1,000 different types of clever to make a successful company. Hi, I'm Kit Cox. I'm founder and CTO of Innate.
I guess there's generative AI and agentic stuff underneath that. Where are you? Where are people?
Culture is the most important thing that you can create as a founder.
What's the scale of the business?
We're about 100 people. We are split between the UK and India. So growth, we're growing at about 40% YOY at the moment.
Fabulous. Do you have an end game? Yacht, Bahamas?
Have a here is my absolute goal, because actually I enjoy the process.
Unless you've got the relationship with the client and you can tell them that their team are the problem, then the project's doomed.
Being honest can be a deeply uncomfortable conversation, but it is the conversation that then leads to amazing success.